Think we're on the hour. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining this spring water cooler chat with Kitos today. I'm Meena Sankaran, the founder and CEO of Kitos, and I'm grateful to all of you for your time and interest today. Hope you all are having a fantastic end to the first quarter of the year. We certainly have had a very fast-paced quarter here at Kitos and can't believe how quickly this year seems to be passing us all by. One recognizable milestone this quarter has been the announcement of a long-standing partnership that has been in works for a while. The collaboration of GHD and Kitos to really accelerate the value we offer to our customers in the water industry as people look towards building or enhancing their digital strategy. For folks who haven't engaged with GHD much, they are a global services company that has been committed to solving the world's biggest challenges in the areas of water, energy, and urbanization. As they lead with their engineering, construction, and architecture expertise, their mission has been to deliver extraordinary social and economic outcomes. One of my favorite things about GHD is that even having been established in 1928, they remain wholly owned by their people, and today have over 10,000 employees, over 200 offices across 5 continents, Asia, Australia, Europe, North and South America, and the Pacific region. At Kitos, employee empowerment is one of our core company values, and I'm delighted to be aligned on several fronts through this partnership. To represent GHD, I'm joined here by 2 industry experts with very varied backgrounds, Anand Ramachandran and Shashank Ramanan. Anand has extensive leadership over the decades in the enterprise sector prior to entering the world of water, and has been with GHD since the inception of GHD Digital, as well as accelerating the efforts in innovation with respect to AI, blockchain, robotics, sensors, and analytics. Shashank is a global digital water market leader at GHD and has been a senior strategist across several organizations in his career, driving change through innovation. Welcome to both of you, Anand and Shashank. Let me kickstart our conversation today, as we have a splendid audience amongst us, by getting to some of our foundational elements and roots of this engagement to help our audience. Okay, and this might be an apt one for you, Anand. As a company building long-lasting relationships with its customers and partners for over 93 years, why did sort of GHD feel the need to create GHD Digital?
Yeah, no, thanks, Meena. Thanks for having me on the webinar. It's a privilege. GHD, as you said, 93 years ago, started in water. Right? Our very first client was, I believe, the city of Melbourne, Australia. And the company went out, and the founders of the company went out and started working with that city to develop their water system. There's so much change happening in the world today, so much technology that's being developed in all those different fronts that you mentioned, right? Artificial intelligence, blockchain, analytics, mobile technologies, sensor-based technologies. And what we're seeing now is that these technologies are starting to intersect with each other and creating new business opportunities, right? New ways of conducting business, new ways of operating, and it's impacting every single industry across the board, right? And a lot of the clients that GHD has served in the past have seen this kind of influx of new technologies coming in and impacting their industries or their clients or their customers or even their employees. And GHD had always been doing these kinds of projects. So we had people in the organization doing digital kinds of things, whether it was in water or in environment or in any of the sectors in which we play. But we started to realize that a more concerted effort was needed. A more focused attention needed to be given to working with these digital technologies, to exploring new ones, to figuring out how they can impact our clients, to figuring out where there's opportunities to co-create new solutions with clients or with technology partners. And so the digital organization was set up to kind of take a lot of the different projects and teams and people that were already in GHD doing digital types of things, and then bring in additional talent from outside of these industries. So they brought me in, for example, from the world of enterprise software and technology, right? Not because I was a water industry expert or environmental industry expert, but because I had a background in technology and how those technologies could be applied to very different markets. And so that's really the kind of the mission. If you think about GHD Digital, we call it transform for good. But if you double click on that word transform, what it really means is taking technologies that have been created or that we create and then applying it for business value to our clients. That's really what it means. So that was kind of the genesis of GHD Digital.
Yeah, and maybe as a follow-on to that, Anand, what do you think tend to be the areas since GHD Digital was formulated that customers tend to come to GHD for? I mean, there are lots of different types of engineering firms, there's consultants, and everyone's sort of embarking in this digital transformation, and they're thinking about, you know, how do you automate? How do I use analytics? You know, how do I even, you know, basically take use of a lot of the data that they have collected over decades? So what are some of the common things that you can think of that seem to be the trigger for customers to come to you for support?
Yeah, I think, you know, historically there's been a chasm, right, between what I'll say kind of operational technologies or processes and core civil engineering type of projects that we used to do. So customers would call GHD when they needed a, you know, water system designed or, you know, a pump implemented and things like that. Then there was this other world over here around information technology and data and those kinds of things where, you know, they would call, you know, IT organizations to come in and help them. And we're now seeing those two worlds collide, so that IT and the OT kind of colliding. And so customers are coming in and asking us to be a trusted advisor on their technology strategy in terms of how they operate their business, because they recognize that those two conversations need to happen in sync, right?
Right.
And so we're being brought in and we're engaging with clients around the opportunities that are being created by these digital technologies. So if you put a sensor out into your plant and that sensor starts spitting out some data, well, that's great. You can capture it and maybe you can monitor that sensor or that particular process. But then how does that interact with all the other processes that you've got going on? So if you can remotely monitor your operation, how does that change the way you manage your workforce, right? And staff that facility? How does it change the way you report to any regulatory agencies around you know, various compliance issues? How does it change the way you order supplies for that facility? So the people are starting to see these different processes, or what used to be very distinct processes, start to collide and intersect, and opportunities to kind of rethink all of those processes. And so we are, from a GHD digital standpoint, we're finding ourselves kind of in the front of helping clients reimagine what those processes are like, or they could be, and then backfilling with the appropriate technologies and capabilities that are out there, and saying, hey, because we have this capability, we can now do X, Y, and Z that we couldn't do before. And so that creates a very different kind of conversation and dynamic with the clients.
And Shashank, I mean, this is a great question for kind of both of your perspectives. And by the way, for the audience, this is the first time we're doing it as a panel where we have two speakers from the same sort of company. We're very excited about that. And Shashank, as the digital water leader at GHD, how would you see, you know, in your day-to-day, the variety of customers that are coming to you, whether it's municipalities or industrial, how is your interface being with them in terms of the common areas of interest that GHD serves?
So no, that's a great question, Meena. And you know, I think what we pondered on when at least I joined the business, and we tried to represent what digital means, because at the end of the day, it's important for us to understand one, what that word digital water means. And we started off by defining that as a company. And we took on a very simple definition that we want to solve the traditional problems that water utilities face over a long time using the new tools and technologies that are available from digital. So, the first thing was, I think every client came to us saying that they want to go on the digital journey, but what's the first step? And how do you define the digital journey? Automation is everywhere. Automation is all pervasive right now. Everybody has some sort of automation in terms of instrumentation and control. It could be a PLC, it could be a SCADA system, it could be other systems that are there. So from our perspective, we define what the digital journey could be, what the digital transformation could be, what are the tools that are available in the industry today, and how we can integrate those tools with what we see as the overall digital path. So when I'll give you an example, right? A lot of our clients have SCADA systems or automation systems or PLC systems. But for a few of our clients up in the Northeast, we just implemented systems which allow remote viewing and remote visualization. So that's taking it one step higher in terms of actually giving them a view of their entire system and network in the times of COVID, giving them an ability to view that system, sitting outside the plant. So these are small, technology increments. And I always believe that from a digital perspective, we being in the digital and the IT industry are proud of our buzzwords, but at the end of the day, these buzzwords have to be real. And, that's our strategy as GHT Digital also, which is our company-wide strategy. How do we make it real? So that was, one example around automation, pervasive automation, and how do we get there? The second thing I think we keep hearing about is data and analytics. How do we make that real now is the next adventure that we are on as GHT Digital.
Got it. No, I appreciate that. And it's also insightful to hear from, you, because you're going to see utilities or industrial customers of all shapes and sizes, right? Like you have interaction utilities that are, probably serving only a 10,000 people community to you have utilities that are serving few million people, and those challenges are very different. And we're just listing out a few over here just for the audience to have some context in their background. But what are, in your mind, sort of, your top common challenges that you tend to interface on a daily basis, where as an engineering consulting firm that is looking at services on a holistic level for all the processes as Anand mentioned, how do you perceive, what are the types of technology out there? What are the types of solutions out there? How does GHD sort of think through that mapping of pain point to solution?
Yeah, so, I think what's happened is that over the last 10 to 15 years, there have been technologies coming out on an incremental basis. And the water utilities have been adopting these technologies on an incremental basis. And what's that created is, that's created data silos. So somebody has adopted a SCADA system, somebody has adopted a PLC, somebody has adopted a CMMS system, somebody may have adopted an EAM system. But at the end of the day, all of these have created data silos. And that's where one of the key points that every customer that I go to has at least one or two separate systems. There could be three different historians. And, I was amazed. We were speaking to a client last week who said they had three different historians. They had a separate database that had kind of, you would go through the water plant and the water operator would enter the necessary data on the wastewater through an iPad, and that would go into a separate database. And none of these databases are talking to each other. So I think if you're starting off on the automation journey and you have minimal level of automation, it is very, very important to have a planned roadmap, because a lot of technologies are available today. So that's one. If you're already advanced in your automation journey and have siloed databases, then that's definitely where we can help. to kind of integrate all of this together to give you a single view and a single record. So there are different aspects on this, Meena. At the end of the day, we are, kind of trying to say that if you have so much of data here and you are advanced and you have a lot of this automation technologies, how do we bring that data together to help you drive analytics? And if it is just simply you're starting off on the automation journey, then have a roadmap for it. Don't just enter into automation for the sake of automation, but have a planned roadmap so that you consolidate from the beginning. It's like, choose the Lego blocks that you want to build your infrastructure on, rather than, taking the blue and the white and, creating a building. So that's about it.
Yeah, and having experts in the industry describe what that architecture could be 10 years for them ahead, and kind of building a very phased approach so that your workforce is also not overwhelmed in that process, right?
Yeah.
And so coming back to you on, you're driving the digital accelerator and you've been sort of on the forefront for, GHD in terms of the innovation aspect of it. How do you see sort of, the innovation being adopted in a way that, folks can maybe take some low-level hanging fruits, or like some risk-averse type of, sort of projects to solve? And there's a lot of things that they can digitize in a plant, but you also don't want to take on a project and make it a 7-year-long project where they can realize the benefits of that automation and analytics, say, day one. So do you have any recommendations on sort of the types of projects or simple low risk kind of opportunities that plant operators can implement today, where they maybe realize the benefits in 3 months from now versus implementing a project that they realize value 7 years from now?
Yeah, no, it's a really great question, because and this is where I was saying, we're taking lessons learned from many other industries and applying it to some of these industries. So, technology companies have been doing this kind of direct sale approach where you create a solution, you have a solution, and you're introducing that solution to a prospective client. I think in a lot of the sectors in which GHD operates, the client has already decided that they want something. So they've done the homework on their side to figure out, okay, we have a need. Here's the business case around that need. Here's potential investments. Here's the potential kind of solutions that are in the market. Let's issue a request for proposal and get some proposals, and then we can compare them. And that's a very lengthy process. It's a somewhat inflexible process, because the client has already kind of established the parameters of that business case. So if you have a solution now that arises that produces some new value the client hadn't even thought about, now you have to again restart that cycle, or you have to save that capability for something downstream. And I think customers that we talk to are starting to recognize this. There are a few, I would say, at least on the public sector side, a few customers that are really on the leading edge, where they're saying, hey, let's lower that barrier, right? Let's figure out how to do a pilot, how to do a competition, how to do a hackathon, how to do a 1-week kind of prototyping session. Let's test some of these ideas, and then we can figure out how to even write that proposal request in such a way that enhances the value and maximizes the opportunity. So that's a very different dynamic than kind of being in this response mode where the RFP has already been created and then we're kind of responding to that. When we look at it from a technology standpoint, Shashank made the point earlier about having a roadmap. I think that roadmap itself becomes a very dynamic vehicle, where historically, companies would call a consulting company to come in, help them put together this roadmap, and it would be this beautiful document that would sit there and collect dust and be out of date, after 5 minutes, right? And that's changing now. Now people want to have something that is much more dynamic, where they say, okay, these are broadly the areas where we want to play. We don't know all of the details. We don't have to figure out all the details, but these are the rough areas. And we know that the business value that we can expect from these kinds of projects. So that business value then gets aligned with that roadmap. Then the company can go out and they can say, all right, we want to have something to help us with data aggregation, right? And we're going to start with data aggregation, or we're going to start with field data collection. But that's then going to lead into data aggregation. It's going to lead into analytics. It's going to lead into reporting. It's going to lead into notifications and workflows and real-time alerts. And it can just kind of mushroom out that way. So it changes the way I think companies kind of look at solutions. They start to think more in a more structured way about what is that roadmap? What are those kind of simple projects that we can do? How do we prototype some of those projects? How do we get into a relationship with vendors and service providers in such a way that we can adopt maybe a solution that they have today and then extend it over a period of time, right? So we're not just looking for something off the shelf that meets all of our requirements. So these are some of the, I would say, changes that I'm seeing in terms of how clients are behaving and how we're engaging with them.
Yeah, and that's very insightful on them, because when I think of our workforce and changes being induced in process and kind of implementation of different technologies, it's also how the workforce has implemented so far things in the last 50 years to how it's going to be sustainable beyond the retiring workforce in certain cases. That brings me into another interesting point, and probably the last question for today, as I start taking in some audience questions that are rolling in here. So I do want to at least have time for one audience question. So one, one of my, probably, either one of you, and Anand, if you want to take a shot at this, would be, how are you thinking through sustainability metrics? Like, all the industries right now, it's top of mind. Investors are thinking about ESG, and customers, whether it's utilities or industries, are thinking about, there's a sustainability officer in some cases, but not something common for utilities to have, but they're definitely looking at how can they be more sustainable within their communities. So what are your thoughts about how is that being measured in many companies, and are you getting an outreach for that?
Yeah. I mean, it's so fascinating you asked that question. I was on a call earlier this morning on that very topic. I think I look at it in kind of 3 dimensions. To me, sustainability is fundamentally a network problem. In other words, a lot of challenges, and some of the ones that you listed earlier, fit very nicely within the 4 walls of the enterprise. But when you talk about sustainability, it very quickly gets beyond those 4 walls. So I may have a very clean operation, a very sustainable operation, but I'm sourcing product X from some other supplier. Mm-hmm. If that supplier is in turn not very sustainable in their operations, then obviously that's going to have an impact on mine. So where do you put the boundary on what is your enterprise versus somebody else, on your operation versus someone else? And so it becomes a network issue, right? And we're starting to see that, for example, if you think about industrial waste as an example, maybe I generate some industrial waste or some wastewater from my operations. Now I have to dispose of it. Well, I may have a choice in terms of partners to work with to do that disposal. They may be perfectly the same in terms of their capabilities of disposing, but one of them has, they went out and bought a bunch of Elon Musk's Cybertrucks, right? And now they've got like a fully electric fleet of trucks. Well, who am I going to pick? Well, I may pick the one that has the electric trucks because I want to be more sustainable, or I want to reduce my footprint. But I'm only going to do that if it's not going to have a huge impact on my cost profile, right? So it's kind of like, I think we're in this world where everybody's talking about sustainability, kind of like people talk about restaurants, right? And we're going to start picking who the vendors are, who the partners are that we want to work with in that network in which we play, based on a whole bunch of factors. And sustainability, and that sustainability profile of that vendor or their offering will be one of the inputs into the decision-making process. So how you model that network, how you enable companies or clients to make those decisions is going to become very big. And we're on the very early stages of that. It's very nascent, but we're already starting to hear from clients, hey, we want to incentivize our senior leaders based on our sustainability footprint and our carbon emission footprint, greenhouse gas emission footprint. How do we operationalize that? How can you guys help us operationalize that? So we're starting to get those kinds of very interesting questions coming up now.
Thank you. And Anand, that leads me to a segue, which I have picked this question because I feel like it's an apt for the call here. And it might be good for all of us to share our perspective. So I might just go around here between the three of us and it says, well, how do you see GHD collaboration with Kitos to drive advanced water intelligence? And kind of goes well with our announcement. And, my take on it, at least, I believe this partnership can really accelerate the efforts that in a very meaningful manner, whether it's public sector or private sector. And one case and example is your hydraulic modeling that you have as part of your platform that you guys offer. And the way I look at it is for customers who are using Kitos and are looking at overall water safety and water quality solutions, whether it's groundwater, effluent, or in the distribution, you now have an entire distributed grid. But by integrating that with a GHD offering, you have sort of an entire advanced perspective of looking at a distributed control system that's not only monitoring, but is also able to take action on it at a process level, structure level, workforce level, and a solution level. And to me, that enhances the value of what either of us could have individually offered to a customer. So that's kind of how I see it. And Shashank, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think water quality monitoring is becoming extremely important today. And one of the reasons that we are partnering with Kitos, obviously from a GHD digital perspective, is that we bring in the engineering expertise, and we use the technology that Kitos currently has. Heavy metals monitoring like arsenate, zinc, cadmium, lead, etc., are again becoming increasingly important as per the water quality. So we saw a straight synergy there. We also saw that there would be software behind the sensors that would then aggregate and do predictive analytics as well and modeling as well. So those were a couple of things that we were looking at, when we saw client needs coming in, and when we saw this particular partnership and how we can leverage it. So that's the overall understanding that we had.
Yeah, and I would add to that. I think when I think about Kitos and really any I would say startup, a small company that we want to work with or collaborate with. For me, I think the value comes down to kind of four things. One is, can we bring some new capability to our clients, right? And add some value. Can we scale up? Can we take on projects that are larger or more complex in some way? Can we bring efficiency to the work that we do? So GHD has been doing water quality services for a long time, but now we can bring even more efficiency, transparency, granularity, and kind of intelligence to that offering. And then the last is, can we collaborate to co-create something new, right? That benefits from the capabilities of both organizations. So you've collected a lot of data around water quality. We have a lot of clients and historical data, and if we can marry those things together, we can create something that neither of us would be able to do otherwise. So I think from all of those four dimensions, we kind of look at it, and it made a lot of sense to have a relationship with Kitos.
No, and thanks for sharing that. And hopefully for all the audience, these talks are, you could always have a lot more time to discuss, getting into the details, but stay tuned because you're going to see potentially, customer case studies or joint engagements that we start announcing very shortly. Our idea with these cooler chats is just to sort of have an informal conversation, be able to plant some seeds, and hope you feel intrigued enough to want to learn more and explore further. We're very grateful to have both of your time today, at least from Kito's standpoint. Anna and Shashank, thank you so much. I hope the audience isn't too shy to try reach out to us more. We will be sharing this recording on a variety of social media channels, as you're already aware. And for a lot of the unanswered questions that we could not get to today, there will be a blog published with all of your answers. So happy March 31st. Have a great rest of the week and hope to see you all soon in one of the next water cooler chats. Stay safe.
Thanks, Meena. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.